Good morning, Bante.
Okay, we're ready.
Yes, Bante, are ready.
Okay, so good morning, everybody. And let us begin the program today with the session of meditation practice. Okay, so take your accustomed, comfortable, and sturdy meditation posture. And begin by obtaining what I call this global or totalistic awareness of the body. Just let the mind settle into the body. And get a feeling of the body as resting on the support of the earth, grounding the energy of the earth, or grounded in the energy of the earth. And pointing with the head towards the heavens above, connecting with the energy of the sky and the heavens. And now gradually settle upon the process of in and out breathing, wherever you can experience this process most clearly and distinctly, whether around the nostrils and upper lip, or through the expansion and contraction of the chest as you breathe in and out, or in the rising and falling movement of the abdomen, rising as you breathe in, falling as you breathe out. So choose your preferred place, a post of observation, and then try to note each in-breath, each out-breath as consistently and continuously as possible. Experiencing in the body the actual felt sensation of the breath coming in and out at the nostrils, or the felt sensation of the chest expanding and contracting, or the felt sensation of the abdomen rising and falling. And to help you keep your mindfulness on the object, you can use the mental note. When breathing in, you note in. When breathing out, you use the mental note out, out. But the attention, the awareness should be on the felt experience of the breath, not on the mental note. Thoughts will naturally arise. Just let them come, let them go, but keep the mind gently but firmly on the in and out breathing. And if you discover that the mind has wandered away from the breath and you've lost track of the breath, you just make the mental note thinking, thinking, or wandering, wandering. Then bring the mind back first to the felt sensation of the body as a whole, and then settle back into the in and out breathing. Again, either the felt experience of the breath coming in and out of the nostrils, the expansion and contraction of the chest, or the rising and falling of the abdomen. Okay, let's continue now in silence until the end of the session. Be careful not to allow the mind to become lost in the alleyways and byways of discursive thinking. Whenever you find the mind drifting off away from the meditation subject, as soon as possible, recognize that the mind is wandering, or thinking, then bring the mind back gently and firmly, first to the felt sense of the body, and then settle the mind into the body for a minute or so until the felt experience of the breath spontaneously arises again. And then continue to observe the felt experience of the breath, in breathing and out breathing, wherever you can feel it most clearly and distinctly, using the mental note in, out, or rising, falling, to keep the mind on the felt experience of the in and out breathing. Okay, now let go of your breath as the object of meditation and bring the mind back just to the felt sense of the body. Then take a couple of deep in-breaths and out-breaths. Breathe in, out, in, out. And then you can slowly and mindfully open your eyes. And again, end the session by rubbing the palms together. Then rub the palms over the face, top of the head, back of the head, back of the neck, shoulders, then down to the lower back and the buttocks. And you can massage the buttocks to stimulate the circulation. Then down the thighs to the knees. And again, you can massage the knees. And then the feet. Okay, in 1 minute, I'll be back, and then we will start the morning lecture. Okay, are we ready to start? Okay, so this is Monday morning, the session of 10 a.m. on Monday morning. And today is Labor Day, so it is September 7th. So let us begin with the homage to the Buddha. So seeing the Buddha in our mind's eye, we do 3 bows to the Buddha. And then we recite the line of homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So good morning, everybody. And we are going to be continuing now with our exposition of the path to liberation. Okay, do you see the screen with the text of the Visuddhimagga?
Yes, Bhante.
Okay. Okay, so let us see where we left off yesterday. So we've brought our meditator up to the insight, what is called the insight leading to emergence. This is the last process of insight immediately preceding the attainment of the supramundane or world transcending path. And so if we track this in terms of the Abhidhamma scheme for the attainment of the path and fruit, so with our average meditator, after coming out from the bhavanga, there comes the moment of mind inverting consciousness. Let's just go back here. So we have the bhavanga or life continuum, then the mind or adverting consciousness arises, taking formations as its object, the sankharas, the conditioned phenomena, seeing these conditioned phenomena as either impermanent, as dukkha, or as not self, in the way taken by equanimity about formations. Then next to the mind or adverting consciousness, there arises the first javana consciousness, which again takes formations or conditioned things as its object in the same way. And this is called the preliminary work or the moment of preparation. Those are just different translations of the same Pali word, parikamma. Then next to that occurs a second javana consciousness, again taking formations as its object, either as impermanent, dukkha, or non-self. This is called access, because one is getting close to the arising of the path. And then comes a third chitta, third moment of consciousness that makes formations its object, again taking the formations either as impermanent, as dukkha, or as non-self. And this is called conformity, anuloma in Pali, because it conforms to the functions of truth in the preceding stages of insight knowledge, and also it conforms to the function of truth in the stage of the path consciousness that will arise next, or that will arise almost next. So we have preparation, access, conformity. Then comes a moment called change of lineage, in which, in that one moment, the meditator drops formations as the object and takes nibbana as the object. And in that moment, it's called change of lineage, because the practitioner is now changing over from the lineage of the ordinary person, the great masses of deluded humanity, and about to enter into the domain of the Aryans, into the family of the Aryans. And the change of lineage will be followed by the arising of the path consciousness. And that's what we're going to come to now. So the text now explains, we're now in chapter 22, I think. Yeah, this is chapter 22. So it explains that change of lineage knowledge comes next, and its position is to invert to the path. And so it doesn't belong to purification by knowledge and vision of the way, which is the sequence of insight knowledges, nor does it belong to purification by knowledge and vision, but it comes in an intermediate role. So in my map of the integrated stages of the path, one sees I put it in square brackets because it doesn't belong to purification by knowledge and vision of the way, and it does not yet belong to purification by knowledge and vision. So it's intermediate, and it takes nibbana as its object. And so here we'll have a more detailed explanation of this transition from the stage of insight knowledges to the arising of the experience of the world transcending path. Okay, so it says, the text says, at this point, nothing further needs to be done by one who wants to achieve the knowledge of the first path, for what he needs to do has already been done by arousing the insight that ends in conformity knowledge. So the meditator has now sort of embarked on it's called the insight leading to emergence. It's a little bit like when you go to the airport, and then first you have to check your baggage. Then you go to the security check where they check your passport and documents. Then you go to the personal check where they check your baggage, and you have to go through the screening of the X-ray screening. Then when you come out from the X-ray screening, nothing more has to be done. You've fulfilled your function. All you have to do is to go to your gate and get on the plane. That could be a simile that we would add into a modern version of the Visuddhimagga. Okay, so as soon as conformity knowledge has arisen in him in this way, and then the thick murk or fog that hides the Four Noble Truths has been dispelled by the force in each of the three kinds of conformity. The three kinds of conformity are actually referring to the preliminary work, access, and conformity itself. All three of them together are sort of collectively called conformity knowledge. So now his mind no longer enters into or settles down on anything within the field of formations, the field of conditioned phenomena, but it retreats, retracts, and recoils as water does from a lotus leaf. And every sign is object, every occurrence is object. It's every mark of conditioned phenomena appears as an impediment. Okay, then when this sequence of chittas that make up conformity knowledge, preparation, access, and conformity itself has ended, then change of lineage knowledge arises. And this knowledge takes as its object the signless, unformed, or unconditioned cessation nibbana. And so that knowledge passes out of the lineage or the plane of the ordinary person, the deluded, worldly person, and the knowledge is about to enter the lineage, the category, the plane of the noble ones. And so this is the first turning to Nibbana as object. Previously, one might be thinking about Nibbana, reflecting on it, contemplating it conceptually, but one has not experienced it. But it's at this moment that Nibbana itself, the unconditioned, the deathless, actually comes into view as an actual objective experience. And then the text gives a simile of how this takes place. It's a rather complicated simile. I won't go into the details. So this is to show how, this is the important point, that conformity and change of lineage occur in a single cognitive process, a single sequence of chittas, but they have different objects. The chittas that make up conformity, preparation, access, and conformity itself take a conditioned phenomena as object, looking at that conditioned phenomena as either impermanent, dukkha, or non-self. But with change of lineage, the conditioned objects are dropped, and the change of lineage takes Nibbana itself as the object. And this is like a man who wants to cross a broad stream and get to the opposite bank. So he runs fast, then he grabs hold of a rope fastened to the branch of a tree on the near bank of the stream. And then he grabs hold of that rope, and then he jumps across with his body moving towards the opposite bank. And when he arrives above the opposite bank, he lets go of the rope and falls on the opposite bank, staggering first, but then he steadies himself there. Okay, so this is like a meditator who wants to establish himself on Nibbana, which is the far shore of the process of samsara. And so he runs fast by means of the insight knowledges, starting with contemplation of rise and fall, then with conformity knowledge, he grabs hold of it says, the rope of materiality fastened to the branch of his selfhood and hanging down. Not so clear. Let's say he grabs hold of the rope of conformity knowledge, which is contemplating impermanence, suffering, or non-self. And then he leaps with the first conformity consciousness. He leaps with the first conformity consciousness, and with the second conformity consciousness, he moves towards Nibbana like the body of the man moving towards the far bank, then with the third moment, this is the moment of conformity, he lets go of the formation as object, and with the change of lineage consciousness, that is like landing on the opposite bank. So the change of lineage consciousness falls onto Nibbana, which is like the man falling from the rope onto the opposite bank, but staggering because he's not yet properly steady on that object. But then with path knowledge, he becomes steady upon Nibbana as its object. Okay, so the text says that conformity is able to dispel the murk of defilements, at least partly able to dispel them, the murk of defilements that conceal the Four Noble Truths, but it is unable to make Nibbana its object. That's because conformity is seeing into the impermanence, suffering, and non-self nature of conditioned phenomena. So it's starting to eliminate the murk or the fog of defilements that conceals the truth. And change of lineage, it says, is unable to dispel the fog of defilements, but it is able to make Nibbana its object. Then we have another simile. This is like a man who goes out at night in order to see the constellations, and he looks up to see the moon. Now, the moon is covered by clouds, and so the moon is not yet visible. And then a wind springs up and blows away the thick clouds. Then another wind blows away the medium clouds, and another wind blows away the fine clouds as well. Then the man saw the moon in the sky free from clouds, and he can see the constellations of the stars. So those three winds, okay, the three kinds of darkness or three kinds of clouds are like the different kinds of levels of delusion that are concealing the truths. And the three kinds of conformity consciousness are like the three winds. Each wind blows away a different level of the cloud of defilements. And then change of lineage knowledge is like the man with the eyes, and Nibbana is like the moon. And so the dispelling of the murk that conceals the truth by each kind of conformity consciousness is like the successive blowing away of the clouds of the different layers by each kind of wind. And change of lineage knowledge is like seeing the clear Nibbana after the fog has disappeared. I don't know, the simile is not so perfect. Anyway, so right after change of lineage knowledge occurs, then without any interruption, the path consciousness arises. So it arises immediately after change of lineage. And as it comes into being, as it arises, it pierces and explodes the mass of greed, hate, and delusion never pierced and exploded before. This doesn't mean that the first path consciousness completely annihilates greed, hate, and delusion, because the first path consciousness is that of stream entry, and its function is only to eliminate the coarsest kind of defilements. So we could say it begins the process of eliminating, permanently eliminating greed, hate, and delusion, but it doesn't actually eradicate them at that point. That will only come as one goes through the later stages of the world transcending path. Okay, now continuing, the text says that this path of stream entry dries up the ocean of suffering of the round and the beginningless round of rebirths, but it doesn't completely eliminate all future existence within samsara, but rather what it does is to ensure that one will not take more than 7 more rebirths, and then one will reach the end of suffering, the end of samsara. So that means that at most there are 7 more existences. But what the path of stream entry does is to close all doors, or all possible, here the text says, all doors to the states of loss. This means that the path of stream entry eliminates the possibility of taking rebirth in any of the 3 lower realms of existence. In the hell realms, the realm of the pretas, the hungry ghosts or afflicted spirits, and in the animal realm. And so at most, one will take 7 more rebirths, and those rebirths will all occur either again in the human realm or in one or another of the heavenly realms, but never again a rebirth in any of the lower realms of existence. So it is the knowledge associated with the path of stream entry, the provider of many hundred blessings, that is called knowledge of the path of stream entry. And I had another little document here which shows the path attainments, the fetters eliminated, and the rebirths remaining. Do you see this file?
Yes, Bhante. Yes, Bhante.
Okay. Okay, so with the attainment of the path of stream entry, out of the 10 fetters, one eliminates, eradicates permanently 3 fetters. These are the 3 grossest fetters. One is the view of a substantial self, because now one has decisively and irrefutably seen into the truth of non-self. So one has eradicated and eliminated any possibility of adopting a view of self. One has eradicated all doubt about the Buddha and his teaching, because with the path of stream entry, one has seen the 4 noble truths, and so one has no doubt that the Buddha is a fully enlightened one, and that the Dharma, his teaching, is true, and that the path that the Buddha teaches is the path to liberation. And then one gives up clinging to just the bare observance of rules and observances, in the belief that merely by observing precepts and undertaking certain observances, rituals, ceremonies, ascetic practices, one can thereby gain liberation. Because one now knows that the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path, or the 3 stages of Sila, Samadhi, and Panya, is the path to liberation. And so those are the fetters eliminated. And then what remains by way of rebirth? At most 7 more rebirths, either in the human or celestial realms, and one has completely ended the possibility of rebirth in the three lower realms, the hells, the animal realm, and the sphere of hungry ghosts. Okay, then in the sequence of the path and fruit, you can see now this is the Abhidhamma way of explanation in terms of the process of consciousness. You can see for the average practitioner, they'll take place the path. The path is always just, in this system, it's just one mind moment, one fleeting mind moment, but it performs this monumental function of utterly transforming the practitioner. And in this case, it will be followed by 2 moments of fruition in which one experiences the bliss, the peace, the freedom of eradicating those fetters. So this is the average practitioner, but the keen practitioner, the one with sharp faculties, this practitioner, because they have sharp faculties, so they don't need the moment of preparation. So they go directly from mind door adverting to the moment of access, the moment of conformity, the change of lineage, then the path. And so they get, as a kind of reward for their sharp faculties, they get 3 moments of fruition, again, in which they experience the bliss, peace, and freedom that comes with eliminating those fetters. Now I compare this in a simile. It's like we might have a man who has been bound by chains, by fetters around his arms, let's say. Okay, and then he's gradually, maybe he got hold of a file and somehow maybe he's rubbing the chains together, filing them away so that the links of the chain are getting progressively weaker and weaker and weaker. So those will be like going through the stages of insight by which one is gradually wearing away the defilements with deeper and deeper and clearer stages of insight. Then comes the moment when one exerts one's energy fully and pulls one's arms apart and breaks the chains. That is like the moment of the path when one eradicates those fetters. And then when the chain is broken, one experiences this moment of relief. Wow, I can move my arms and I'm free. That is like the fruition. Okay, coming back. Okay, so now it says immediately after the knowledge of the path, there arise either 2 or 3 moments of fruition consciousness. And then with the arising of fruition, okay, with the attainment of the path, one becomes the first noble person that is the one on the path of stream entry. At the moment of the fruit, one becomes an actual stream enterer called the second noble person. And so here it said, however negligent he might be, he is bound to reach the end of dukkha by traveling through the round of rebirths among deities and human beings, at most for 7 more times. Okay, after the experience of fruition, then one next will undertake what is called the reviewing, the process of reviewing. And this is a process by which one reviews the path, fruit, and nibbana. This is explained in the rather technical Abhidhamma terms. Let's try to put it into more normal, into to explain it in more normal terms. So what one does after attaining the path in fruition, one will review the path, one reviews the fruit that one's experienced, one reviews the defilements that have been abandoned, one reviews the defilements that still remain, and one reviews nibbana. And then this is the way one reviews. So one sort of looks back on the experience one has just undergone, and one considers, this is the path that I have come by. I've gone through those insight knowledges, and then I've come to that world transcending path experience. Then one looks back and considers the fruit. I've just experienced the bliss and peace of that fruit attainment. Then one reviews the defilements that have been abandoned. One considers, I have eliminated such and such defilements. Then one considers the defilements that remain. So I still have to overcome these defilements. And then one reviews nibbana. So that is the deathless state that I penetrated as object in the path and fruit experience. And so there are actually, in this case, there are 5 kinds of reviewing take place. Reviewing of the path, the fruit, defilements abandoned, defilements remaining, and reviewing of nibbana. And so in the case of the stream enterer, also this 5 kinds of reviewing take place for the once returner and non-returner. But for the arahat, there is no reviewing of defilements that remain because the arhat has eliminated all defilements. And so in total, there are 19, at most 19 kinds of reviewing, but it's said that those at the lower stages may or may not review the defilements abandoned and those that remain. So those kinds of reviewing might not take place. And so some practitioners might review just the path, the fruit, and nibbana without considering defilements eliminated and those that remain. Okay, it can be the case that a practitioner reaches the stage of stream enterer and then remains there all their life, doesn't go further. And then in that case, they might go on to rebirth as a human being or a deity. And if they're the dullest kind of stream enterer, they will go on for 7 more lives, and then they'll reach the final goal only in the 7th life. But here, we're going to consider a practitioner who reaches the final goal in this life itself, who becomes an arhat in this life. So here we have a practitioner who is not content with the attainment of stream entry, but who forms the determination to reach the second fruition, the second stage of attainment. And one does so by reducing craving for sensual pleasures and ill will. So the second attainment doesn't eradicate any fetters, but it weakens the lust for sensual pleasures and ill will. And so now the practitioner makes the determination to reach the second path and fruit. He stirs up his spiritual faculties and begins the work of contemplation again. And he doesn't have to go back to the earlier knowledges. Let me just get. So he doesn't have to go back to the purification of view, distinguishing mental and material phenomena, doesn't have to go back to the purification by overcoming doubt, by contemplating the working of conditionality, doesn't have to go back to comprehension by groups, but he can pick up directly with the mature knowledge of rise and fall, and then quickly goes through these insight knowledges of dissolution, fearfulness, danger, disenchantment, desire for liberation, to knowledge of reflection, and then to equanimity about formations. So he quickly passes through the insight knowledges, coming to the equanimity about formations. And if the faculties are not strong enough to reach the second stage, then the meditator will just remain at equanimity about formations. But we're taking a practitioner who has the capacity to go on to the final goal. So this practitioner reaches equanimity about formations, and then comes that insight leading to emergence. There arises conformity and change of lineage knowledge. And then after change of lineage comes the path of once returning, and after the path comes the fruition. And so with the arising of the fruit of once returning, one is now a once returner, that is the fourth noble person. And the once returner is one who, well, let's look at that other chart. So the once returner weakens greed, hatred, and delusion, particularly weakens the greed or lust for sensual pleasures and ill will or hatred. And this meditator, usually it's said that they will return once more to this world and then reach the end of suffering. But according to the way it's explained in the commentaries, the once returner can have at most 2 more existences, because if they achieve once returning as a human being, they can be reborn in the Deva world and then achieve final liberation there, or they can achieve the stage of once returning in the human world, take rebirth in the Deva world, and then come back into the human world, and then reach final liberation on their rebirth into the human world. So in that way, they can have even 2 more rebirths. There are other possibilities as well, but we don't have to take all of the permutations. So the once returner comes back either one more time to the Deva world or human world and reaches final liberation there, or at most takes rebirth from the human realm to the Deva realm, then comes from the Deva realm back to the human realm and reaches final liberation here. Okay, now we take the practitioner who is not satisfied with the stage of once returner, but wants to go further. So this one again takes up the practice, again contemplates formations as impermanent, dukkha, non-self, enters the series of insights, comes to the stage of equanimity about formations. And now, if his faculties are strong enough, following equanimity about formations, he'll enter upon the insight leading to emergence. There occurs conformity, change of lineage, and then arises the path of non-returning. And then following the path of non-returning, there comes immediately after, there comes the fruition consciousness, the fruit of non-returning. Okay, when one becomes a non-returner, then one does not come back ever again into rebirth in the desire realm of existence, but rather one takes rebirth spontaneously in the form realm, usually in the the group of realms called the pure abodes, and then one attains final liberation there without ever coming back to this world. And so looking at the chart, we have the non-returner. And what the non-returner eliminates permanently are the two fetters of sensual desire, a sensual craving, and aversion or ill will or hatred. And so this disciple is reborn into the form realm, usually in the pure abodes, and then attains final liberation there without ever returning back to the desire realm, to the lower heavens, or to the human realm. Okay, but now we have a disciple who's reached the stage of non-returner, but is not satisfied with that, doesn't even want to take a rebirth into the form realm and reach final liberation there, but who wants to gain final liberation in this life itself. And so this disciple again undertakes the practice, stirring up the spiritual faculties, goes through the series of insight knowledges, comes to equanimity about formations, and then when the force of the insight is strong enough, he goes into the insight leading to emergence, going from equanimity about formations through conformity and change of lineage, and then arises the path of arhatship, followed by the fruit of arhatship. And so the fruition consciousness of arhatship follows immediately upon the path knowledge of arhatship. And at this point, the disciple has now become an arahat, one of the great ones whose asavas or defilement or cankers have been destroyed, one who is bearing the last body, laid down the burden, reached the goal, destroyed the fetters of becoming, one rightly liberated with final knowledge, worthy of the highest offerings of the world with its deities. And then we see in the table what the Arhat has eradicated are the 10 subtle fetters. So this is desire for existence in the form realm, desire for existence in the formless realm, the subtle conceit, I am, which remains even in the non-returner. And this is somewhat different from the conceit of thinking I'm better than others, but it's not so much that arrogant conceit, but it's just a subtle notion that there is some real I am here. And this differs from the sense of self. The sense of self is the sense that I have a real substantial self, which lasts and maybe it's permanent and everlasting. But the conceit I am is just a kind of spontaneously arisen notion that I am something, and that arises just because of the underlying ignorance. But the disciple, even the non-returner, will see and know that that I am is a deluded idea. He doesn't accept it and buy into it. And so the notion I am doesn't give rise to a sense that I have a true self, but it's just a kind of spontaneously occurring notion I am. Okay, then the ninth fetter is restlessness, even a very subtle kind of restlessness that remains even in the non-returner. It's not like the kind of restlessness that we as ordinary people experience: agitation, worry, concern, anxiety, and so forth. But it's just the the lightest, subtlest level of restlessness. A little bit like when you've done a vacuum cleaning of your room and you've brushed off all the furniture and swept all of the dust out of the room, but still there are some light little particles of dust floating in the air that you haven't gotten rid of. So that is like the restlessness that remains even in the once returner and non-returner. But in the case of the arhat, that restlessness is completely eradicated. And then the arhat completely eradicates the last traces of ignorance. And so the arhat has the fullness of wisdom. And the way I like to consider this, using again a simile, we could take the simile of the moon, and we have maybe on the night of the dark moon, when you look up at the moon, you don't see any lightness in the moon at all. If you could discern the moon at all, it's just like a completely dark sphere. So that is like the ignorance in the ordinary unenlightened person. But in the case of the stream enterer, who's gained the knowledge of the first path, the first realization of the Four Noble Truths, this would be like the quarter moon, where the moon is 1/4 bright and 3/4 dark. So the 1/4 bright is like the wisdom that's become manifest, and the 3/4 dark is like the ignorance that's remaining. The attainment of the path and fruit of once returning, this is like the night when the moon is half light, half bright, and half dark. So wisdom is half full, and ignorance is still half of ignorance remains. With the attainment of the path and fruit of the non-returner, this is like the moon on the night when the moon is 3/4 bright, but there's still 1/4 of the moon is shrouded in darkness. That is like the mind of the non-returner. In that 1/4 of darkness, the 1/4 of ignorance, that is like the ignorance that is remaining even in the non-returner. And with the attainment of the path and fruit of arhatship, then the wisdom becomes complete. And that is like the full moon, when the moon is completely illuminated by light and there's no trace of darkness anymore in the moon. So that is like the elimination of that 1/4 band of darkness. That is like the arhat's eradication of ignorance. And so for the arahant, there's no rebirth anywhere in any realm, but the arhat lives in the experience of nibbana, and with his passing away, attains the ultimate unconditioned nibbana. Okay, maybe before I take questions, I just want to go into something that comes in a later section. There's a lot of detailed explanation here about the different factors of enlightenment that are present in the path consciousness. And then there's a section on the defilements that are eliminated. I actually already went through these in terms of the fetters. So we went through the fetters. The asavas that are eliminated, and then what's called the underlying tendencies, the anusayas. You can just look at this on your own, but I want to go to section 92, which is important. So this section is a sort of detailed explanation of what happens at the moment of the world transcending path. So it says that at the time of penetrating to the truths, that's the Four Noble Truths, each one of the four paths is said to exercise four functions in a single moment. So the four functions are full understanding, abandoning, realizing, and developing. And each of these functions takes place with respect to one or another of the Four Noble Truths. So the function of full understanding takes place with respect to the truth of suffering, the dukkha arya satya. So when one reaches any of the path experiences, the path takes nibbana as its direct object, but simultaneously with the penetration of nibbana as the object, by way of function, one now understands the truth of suffering because one has a standpoint outside of the five aggregates, by which one can look back at the five aggregates and see that the five aggregates are indeed dukkha. Then the path consciousness has the function of abandoning certain of the defilements included under the second noble truth. So in the broader sense, the second truth includes all of the defilements that keep us in bondage to suffering. And with the attainment of each path, one abandons certain defilements, fetters, asavas, underlying tendencies, and so on. And so that is the function of abandoning that takes place. The path consciousness itself takes as object nibbana, and that experience of nibbana is called realization, directly witnessing, directly experiencing the cessation of dukkha, which is the third noble truth. And then with the attainment of the path consciousness, the 8 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path rise up very powerfully. And so they are now developed. And so in this way, these 4 functions take place even in that one momentary path consciousness. And then the commentator refers to some of the sayings of the ancient teachers, which give similes for the 4 functions in a single moment. So it says, just as a lamp performs 4 functions simultaneously at a single moment, it burns the wick, it dispels darkness, it makes light appear, and it uses up the oil. So the path knowledge penetrates to the four truths simultaneously in a single moment. It penetrates to the truth of dukkha by penetrating it with full understanding. It penetrates to the origin of dukkha by penetrating with abandoning. It penetrates to the path by way of developing the path factors, and it penetrates to the truth of cessation by penetrating it with realization. Okay, then another simile given is that of the sun. When it arises, performs four functions simultaneously. That is, it illuminates visible objects, it dispels darkness, it causes light to be seen, and it removes the cold that gives warmth. And so in this way, the path consciousness or path knowledge performs four functions. So just as the sun illuminates visible objects, so the path knowledge illuminates the truth of suffering with full understanding. Just as the sun dispels darkness, so the path knowledge dispels the defilements that constitute the origin of suffering. Just as the sun causes light to be seen, so path knowledge develops the other path factors by bringing them up strongly. And as the sun allays cold, dispels the cold, so path knowledge realizes cessation, which is the tranquilizing of defilements. Okay, then the Visuddhimagga will go into more detailed explanation of full understanding, abandoning, realization, and development. But we don't have time to take those now. And so with this, we conclude this chapter on the attainment of the paths and the fruits. Okay, so now I think we can take some questions. Let me just get a little more water to clear my throat. It's starting to get phlegm. So let me get some water. Okay, so let us start taking the questions. So we take Sud. You can unmute.
Excuse me. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Bhante, for taking my question. With respect to the four factors of stream entry, does what is described here, does it correspond to practicing the Dhamma with in line with the Dhamma, or is that something different?
No, there are two different sets of what are called in Pali Sotapatti Yanga, which shouldn't be confused. Let me just type in that expression. Yeah, so the Pali word uses Sotapatti Yanga, which can be interpreted in two ways, either as factors for stream entry or factors of stream entry. So, and then there are four for each. So each one has four. So the four factors for stream entry are the factors that one has to fulfill in order to attain stream entry. So those are associating with wise people, listening to the Dhamma, practicing wise attention or systematic attention. And then the fourth of those is Dhammano Dhamma Patipatti, practicing in accordance with the Dhamma. So those are the four factors that an ordinary person takes up in order to attain stream entry. But then there are four factors of stream entry. These are the four qualities possessed by a stream enterer. And that is unshakable or unwavering confidence in the Buddha, unwavering confidence in the Dhamma, unwavering confidence in the Sangha. So those are sort of implied by the eradication of doubt. And then the fourth is firm adherence to what's called the virtuous conduct dear to the noble ones. So that would be, at minimum, firm adherence to the five precepts. Does that answer the question?
So the meditation, the movements that we attain, and what we're doing in meditation here with observing the rise and fall and going into the Javanga consciousnesses, does that correspond to practicing the Dhamma in line with the Dhamma? Or
Yeah,
is
yeah.
that,
The stages of insight knowledge would be the advanced stages of practicing Dhamma in accordance with the Dhamma. Yeah.
okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, so now Dayani.
Yes, Bante, good morning.
Good morning.
I would like to know if a stream enterer know they are a stream enterer and how many more births they have to take.
I would say that a person who's attained stream entry would know that they have attained stream entry, but a person could think that they've attained stream entry without having really attained it. They might have a very powerful meditative experience of deep insight, some other unusual experience, maybe even a jhana experience, and they mistake that for the attainment of stream entry. So thinking that one has attained stream entry is not necessarily a certain guarantee that one has attained it. I don't think a stream enterer would necessarily have a clear knowledge of how many births lie ahead for them, because it's probably not fixed. Once you attain stream entry, what's fixed is that there will be no more than 7 more existences. But exactly how many more existences, if any, depends on how much effort one puts in and the degree to which one's accumulations of merit and wisdom are strong enough, so that there are many variables. So the number of existences would not be fixed.
Okay, Bante, thank
That
you.
would be my assumption.
Yeah, can I presume that actually the Sangha has, all of them has attain the stream enterer?
Say again.
The Sangha, can I presume that the Sangha actually, all of them has attained stream enterer stage?
By Sangha, you mean monks and nuns?
Yes.
No, no. Even the attainment of stream entry is a very rare attainment.
Yeah, but obviously the three vetters are eliminated in Sangha, right, Bante?
The three fetters?
Yes.
No, I mean very, very few monastics have actually eliminated the three fetters. But let us just say that in a way, the three fetters is a somewhat tricky matter because a person who is, they studied the Dhamma well, then won't adopt a view of a substantial self, and they could have strong faith in the Buddha and his teaching, and so they think, I have no doubt about the Buddha and his teaching, and I understand that it's practicing sila, samadhi, and panya that leads to liberation, not holding just to precepts and ritualistic practices. And so one could think that one has thereby eliminated the three fetters, but that's not actually the elimination of the fetters. Yeah, so attainment of even of stream entry is a quite, let us say, a rare and advanced attainment. Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Bante.
Okay, so we go on to Sharanya.
Good morning, Bante.
Good morning.
I just wanted more clarification about the role of ritual worship and ceremonies. I see that there are ceremonies at my local Buddhist temple, and then there are also ceremonies that come with the culture.
Yeah.
And I suppose there's no harm in practicing it, but what should be the right attitude to that? Because Buddha does acknowledge the existence of deities who
Yeah.
can influence your life.
Yeah.
But to proceed further in the path, what is the best way to approach that?
Well, first about the role of rituals and ceremonies. I'd say rituals and ceremonies play important role in all forms of Buddhism. And they're not to be rejected in themselves, because the rituals and ceremonies would be a way of, let's say, of communally, in a community, giving expression to one's faith and devotion. And they thereby would constitute a means of cultivating and acquiring merit or wholesome karma. Because when one engages in the ceremonies and rituals, what one is doing is, amongst other things, one is reciting praises of the triple gem. One is calling to mind, recollecting the qualities of the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. One is making offerings of candles or lights, flowers, incense, fruits, and engaging in other kind of Dhamma practices, which are indicated in the verses and gathas that one recites in the course of the ritual and ceremony, repenting one's past evil deeds, rejoicing in the merits of others, sharing one's merits with others, reciting suttas that should remind one of the teachings of the Buddha. So the rituals and ceremonies are collective ways in which one gives expression to one's faith and develops wholesome qualities if it's done with right understanding and with right mindfulness. But if one just engages in the ritual and ceremony just blindly, thinking that by participating in the ceremony, I'm going to gain liberation, then it's done with wrong understanding. And as for the existence of the deities, the Buddha, of course, he recognizes the existence of these deities, but he doesn't say that to his disciples that one should worship the deities and expect to get favors from them. But what one does in common Buddhist practice is to share one's merits with the deities. And by sharing the merits with the deities, then one wins the good graces of the deities, the compassion of the deities. So behind the scenes, they're supposed to help you in certain ways. Okay, so now we'll take Shan Jong Bashar. Okay, you unmute yourself. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Bande. So my question is, for a meditator who takes formation as object,
Yeah.
they have understanding of that formation to a certain level. But when the meditator, before they have attained arahantship and really experienced nibbana, they take nibbana as their object at the change of lineage.
Yeah.
Then upon what kind of understanding or standard can they examine that object is truly nibbana?
I see, rather than just going through some experience and mistakenly taking that to be Nibbana, is that what you mean?
I feel that if they haven't experienced what nibbana is, how would they understand that status or concept even to take that as a object? How do they even practice that, taking nibbana as an object before they even experience what nibbana is?
I think one doesn't have to have that understanding. I think it's through the insight into the unsatisfactory nature of the conditioned phenomena, and one has an understanding that beyond the conditioned phenomena, there is the state of peace, which is the state of freedom, the state of ultimate happiness, which is the cessation of dukkha. So one has that conviction, even though one hasn't experienced it yet. And then when insight reaches its peak, then one goes into the change of lineage and the path, then just automatically the mind makes that switch from conditioned formations to nibbana.
I see. Thank you, Bande. So it is not a purposefully effort. It's more like a natural consequence of their inside knowledge and a tendency that they naturally generate towards liberation, freedom, and peace.
Yeah, you expressed that very, very well. Yeah.
Thank you, Bande.
Yeah, but you find this dealt with in some of the passages in the Visuddhimagga in chapter 21 that I didn't deal with because it's a bit rather complex and technical. But if you want more details, you can look back at that.
Thank you, Bande.
Especially it's the section, I think, dealing with the insight leading to emergence, the more detailed discussion of that.
I see. Thank you very much, Bande.
Okay, Kenneth. Kenneth? You can unmute.
Yes, Bante. Bante, I was trying to understand this the Javana consciousness. So the fruition in the Javana consciousness that happens before the change of lineage, right?
No, no. The fruition occurs after. The change of lineage precedes the path. Let me get it. You can see the sequence here. This is change of lineage, then path, then fruition.
Yes, and so Bante, the fruition is actually stream enterer, and those 4 levels, like once returner, non-returner, and arahat. Is that the fruition, or is fruition something else?
Well, the fruition within this system refers to these moments of experience or moments of consciousness, occasions of consciousness in which one is experiencing nibbana.
Moments of consciousness experiencing Nibbana.
Yeah, that
And-
that occur as the result of having achieved the path. So the path has the special function of eradicating the defilements, weakening or eradicating the defilements. And then the fruition experiences, I say, the bliss, peace, and freedom that comes when those fetters and defilements are eliminated.
And Bhante, what's the difference between the average person and the keen person in terms of fruition? Because the keen person has a extra fruition. How?
Yeah, I guess the keen person would be one who has stronger wisdom faculty. And so it's said that this person doesn't have to go through that moment of preparation,
Yes.
but goes directly into access and
Mhm.
change of, then conformity, then change of lineage.
So that extra fruition, Bhante, is that something specific that that person sees that the
It's just because to fill out that process of consciousness, so they get an extra moment of an extra moment of fruition. But the moments are supposed to be so quick that I don't know how you could distinguish whether you're getting 2 or 3.
or 3? Yes. Thank you, Bhante.
Maybe somebody gets only 2 moments of fruition and he complains, hey, I'm entitled to a 3rd moment of fruition. And then you say to him, you are not a person with keen faculties. You get only 2 moments of fruition.
Thank you, Bhante.
No cheating. Okay, Namal. Namal. I lost him or her. Her, lost her. Okay, Gita.
Hi, Bhante. Good morning. Thank you for teaching us. I have a question on the attainments. The 3rd and 4th attainment, is that even possible to achieve for a lay disciple who's entered the path? Or is it only strictly for a monastic order?
Actually, in the Buddha's time, there were many who achieved the 3rd stage.
Okay.
Yeah, you find this mentioned in Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 73, where somebody is questioning the Buddha, and the Buddha says, I have many disciples, male and female lay disciples, who have reached the stage of non-returning. As for the 4th stage, the stage of arhatship, there are some reports in the suttas or in the canonical texts of lay people who reach the stage of arhatship, but once they reach arhatship as a lay person, it either occurs when they're on the verge of death or very soon after reaching arhatship. As soon as possible, they go forth into the homeless life and become a monk or a nun.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you for teaching us.
Okay. So next is Lelia. Whoops, Lelia.
Bhante, thank you, Bhante. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
This is my question regarding the 3rd fetters eliminated by stream entry, clinging to precept and observances. Can you please elaborate a little bit? And the clinging here, is it linked to the dependent origination?
Is it what?
Therefore,
Is it what?
linked to the dependent origination?
Is it clinging?
Clinging, yeah, clinging.
To dependent origination.
Therefore, the stream enter rebirth has a 7th life because clinging to precept and observances. Is it because the clinging is still what we call it's a link? Is it a link to dependent origination?
Yeah, well, clinging to precepts and observances is one aspect of clinging. that
Yes.
occurs in dependent origination. So in dependent origination, we have craving, clinging, and existence, right? Then followed existence, we have birth, then old age and death. So
Yeah.
we have clinging after craving, and clinging is explained by way of 4 types of clinging. And one of those types of clinging is clinging to precepts and observances. But then
Alright.
this is eliminated by the stream enterer. But the stream enterer has not yet eliminated all types of clinging, but they've eliminated clinging to views, clinging to the concept of self, clinging to precepts and observances, but they haven't yet eliminated completely the clinging to sensual pleasures.
All right.
Does that answer the question?
Yes, yes. And I think Sabante has expressed the excessive what I call the precept and observers, why they still hasn't eliminated. Can Bante explain a little bit more why the ritual and ceremony it's become the feather?
Why is it a fetter?
Yes.
I guess because it's the belief that merely by observing certain rules or precepts and by participating in certain ceremonies, observances, and usually the text mentions especially the kind of ascetic practices that were common amongst the ascetics of ancient India. The idea that, like fasting for long periods, going naked, exposing the body to extreme heat and cold, sleeping on beds of thorns, the belief that practices like that could lead to liberation. Those would be included under clinging to observances. And so one who becomes a stream enterer knows that it's not in this way, not even just by observing external precepts, that one gains liberation, but one has to go through the process, through the development of sila, of good conduct, samadhi, and panya, that one gains liberation.
All right, Bante, thank you.
Okay, Lena Agarwal. You can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Bhante. Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay, now I hear you.
Thank you very much for your teachings, Bhante. Really, really appreciate it. I'm just wondering, is it possible for a lay person to enter Shotabana? I know it, as you just mentioned, that in the Buddha's time, there were many lay people as well who had entry. But I've been kind of told that it's kind of really hard, as you yourself said, that even all the monastics are not stream enterers. Given that the human birth is so rare and is so precious, and one really doesn't want to be coming back again and again and go through the entire suffering again, what can a layperson do in order to kind of fasten or hasten the road to stream entry? And is it really, really possible? Have there been any examples where the householders have actually attained stream entry, or do you really have to become a monastic to attain in the current environment?
Of course, it's said that monastic life provides the most suitable conditions for attaining stream entry. But if a lay person could stake out sufficient time in their schedule for diligent practice, they're able to attain it. That's part of what's the guarantee of the Buddha's teaching. But it always takes diligent practice. One can't, not so easy to attain if one is always involved in busy activities.
But that diligent practice doesn't really have to be a cushion meditation. One can be kind of mindful throughout the day, doing anything whatsoever a person is doing. Would that really suffice? If somebody is mindful throughout the day, but is not really able to devote that much amount of time for the cushion meditation?
I would say it would be an extremely extraordinary person that could attain stream entry just by going about their daily activities with mindfulness.
Right.
Um,
Right.
it could be
Okay.
that there's somebody with very, we say very inherently with sharp faculties and with a very abundant accumulation of merits from past lives who is able to do that. But it would be a very rare case.
So what should a householder do? Somebody who is bound by responsibilities or financial constraints, but realizing the importance of Dhamma, what should one do to kind of make, you can't make sure, but, try your level best, basically,
Yeah.
take a shot at it.
Certainly to devote at least one period a day, preferably 2 periods a day, to dedicated practice of meditation. And then periodically, when time and conditions allow, to find opportunities to go on meditation retreat.
Right. And if somebody actually can afford it, somebody doesn't really have responsibilities, no children, and financially a person is stable, then would you actually recommend that the person should be leaving the job or anything else the person is doing? And actually, if the person is really earnest, should actually go on to the path of Dhamma, maybe become a nun or a monk? If somebody is really earnest and cannot, doesn't really have any responsibilities.
I don't make recommendations like that. It's up to I just leave it up to the person.
Right. But it would hasten the path, yes?
Yeah, it would provide more suitable opportunities, let's say.
Thank you so much, Bhikkhu Bodhi. Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll take Sandy.
Good morning, Venerable
Good morning.
Sir. My question is about the knowledge of equanimity about formations.
Yeah.
It's described as the culmination of insight knowledges.
Yeah.
And I too was a bit confused about paragraph 63, chapter 21, which reads that after one is able to discern rise and fall, either equanimity or repulsiveness is established.
Yeah.
So I just did a preliminary search on the internet, and I pulled up a list by Mahasi Sayadaw,
Yeah.
who lists Nibbida Jnana as a separate type of insight knowledge, along with equanimity about formations.
Yeah.
And so my question is, can we, how to read this? Because if we can't obtain stream entry until we have this equanimity about formations, are we to understand that first, can we understand by repulsiveness that he meant Nibbida rather than the term we use in connection with repulsiveness of the body and food, which is patikula. Sorry about my pronunciation.
Yeah, no, it's not the repulsiveness of the body. In fact, I find, as I said yesterday, somebody asked about this. I said that I found the use of that revulsion being established there a bit strange, because it seems that in equanimity about formations, what should be established is equanimity, not revulsion. I just find it a bit puzzling, and I don't have an explanation for that.
Right. The only way I could make sense of it is that Mahasi Sayadaw lists Nibbida Jnana, which is alternatively translated as repulsiveness or disgust, as a separate insight knowledge.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's an earlier insight knowledge. So it seems to me that when you reach the stage of equanimity about formations, one should have transcended or overcome any sense of revulsion or repulsion. It's a puzzle to me. I don't know how to explain it.
Right. I was just thinking it might be a kind of like tender insight, kind of like the rise and fall of formations. You have the tender knowledge and then
Yeah.
the more mature. But so that's basically in your
Yeah, I think
introduction.
we're going to have to break now. I'm sorry, but you know.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah, we're past our breaking time. So the other people who have questions can hold the questions for the final question period. And I'll try to give priority to you. I see Mary Guo and Robert Lurie. I see still more questions coming. So just hold those till, and I didn't get to take the last chapter. So what I'm going to suggest, because we should do the last chapter, that the period from 2:30 to 3, instead of doing it as a meditation, we'll go through chapter 23, the final chapter, which deals with the final fruits of the path. But you still have your breakout group from 1:30 to 2:25, and then the questions that arise in that breakup group will take from 3:10 till 4 p.m. Okay, so thank you all for your attention, and now we break for the lunch and the rest period, and then I'll see you at I will see you at 2:30 p.m.
Thank you, Bhante. Bhante, we also have some reflection. I send you an email. Can you please check your email?
Okay.
Thank you, Bhante.